So last night, a friend of mine sent me an email that he wants to try and make some money as a professional photographer. And he put up a site, he wanted me to look at it and give any thoughts. And I've been meaning to do a video about how to become a professional photographer, or I should say, how to fail at becoming a professional photographer, for quite a while. So I thought, well, this is a good reason. I'm just going to do like a video letter to my friend Dan. You can't make a living as a professional photographer. I want to repeat that. You cannot make a living as a professional photographer or videographer or filmmaker, whatever you want to call it. However, you can make a living creating photographs that fill up blank walls or blank pages or blank screens. I want to repeat that. You can make a living producing photographs or video that fill up a blank wall or a blank page or a blank screen. I mean, just an empty box somewhere. But the shortest distance to failing at a professional photographer is to sell yourself as a professional photographer or to sell photography in general. There is no such thing as a market for photographs. None. Zero market. No money in it. Nobody buys photographs. Nobody. And I'm not exaggerating. I'm not saying this for effect. This to me is the fact of all facts. People again buy photographs to fill up a blank page. And the reason they want that blank page, blank screen, blank whatever filled up is why they're going to hire you. And if you don't understand why they want something put here, how can you possibly provide it to them? How can you possibly meet their needs? Because people don't buy photographs. I don't buy photographs. I love photography. I find this, I've been working for myself for 30 years. If you take any job that you've done and you just really stand back and you study it, you can actually see all the elements of that business. You don't need to look at anything else, but you have to look at it objectively. You can't, look at it with these preconceptions of what, like a computer programmer is, a photographer is, or a videographer, or whatever. So I'm going to give you a couple of stories of where I've worked as a professional photographer. The first was I was out of college, I was interested in photography, and my brother worked for a PR agency. And he said, we're doing this event, Lori would like to, get a photographer, can you come take some photographs? And I said, sure. So I didn't think I had a camera at the time, but my cousin had a Ricoh. So I borrowed his Ricoh, and I went there to take photographs of this event. And this guy comes up to me, the client, and he's like, what's that? And I'm like, it's my camera. And he's like, yeah, I know, but why isn't it a Nikon? And I was like, hey, you don't know anything about photography. This is just as good as a Nikon. You're a knucklehead. Who asks such a stupid question? Of course, I was a kid. I didn't do my brother's boss anyway, which I'm sure, But I didn't really realize, what the client wants. So, excuse me, the client, photography is not really the one thing he wants. He wants to show the people he's selling to that he's a professional, that he's went out and he's hired a real photographer. So he doesn't really care whether the Ricoh can take as good photos as a Nikon, but he knows the Nikon is expensive. He knows that people recognize that as a real investment in photography equipment. For all people know, the Ricoh is 10 times the price of the Nikon. It's not what it's about. It's about perception. So he was upset that I wasn't giving the message that, that I'm shooting with the Nikon, that I put a bunch of money into it, and that he hired me because he's successful, and the people that do business with him will be successful. Be curious to see if the microphone picks up the printer going through its thing in the background. Anyway, so that was rule number one, right? I mean, I thought I'm being hired to take photographs of these people at this event for a publication later, but that's not what the client wanted. The client wanted somebody to look like a professional photographer that costs a lot of money, right? Okay, so that's number one, and I think any professional photographer will tell you that even if you feel you can take the photographs with your cell phone, even if you think they'd be better photographs, you need to know what looks good to the client, what makes the client feel good in the context of what they're doing. So that's the first thing I learned back then. And again, you can argue all you want that no, it's about the photography and you have to be good, and if you took crappy photographs, even with a Nikon, that the client would be better off with good photos from a Ricoh than bad photos from a Nikon, which is the argument I would have made back then. Wrong, Wrong, wrong. That's not what the client wants. You can't speak for what the client wants. Oh, now we got the freaking post office truck out there. The point I'm making, and this is something I bet a lot of photographers don't realize, is that an image or a photograph of something that somebody cares about is anxiety producing. It's very worrisome because that person wants to be represented the right way. And you're representing them with your photograph. So photography brings on anxiety in your client as certainly as a dentist can bring on pain to you. And just like a dentist, it doesn't make a difference how good you are. If you walk out of there in pain, that's all you're going to remember, and you're never going to go back again. So in photography, I'm going to talk a lot about this. You really need to reduce the anxiety of the process, the pain of the process. That is so important. If you can't do that, there's no way that you can ever succeed. Again, think of photography as doing something like a root canal, where you must be very diligent to make sure your client is never in any pain. Okay, fast forward now to this past month. So I have a friend, and she's a real estate broker. And in her office, it's part of a big firm, they have this guy, Matt, there, who used to do their marketing and would take photographs of all the properties. So when she had a listing, he would come, take these photographs with the Sony RX100. He'd just go around room to room, boom, 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 no flash, no anything, just whatever. And then he would create the PDF and the MLS listing, whatever. Anyway, so I guess a couple months ago, whatever, his wife got this really nice job in the West Coast. So he quit and he moved. And of course, did this big firm run out to hire a photographer? No, of course not. Nobody wants photographers. So they just told the agents to take the freaking photograph with your cell phone or something. But, my friend complained, and they said, okay, fine, go hire somebody. We'll pay you $100 per property. So she came to me and said, Max, do you want to take these photographs for $100? Don't really need anything, great. Just, if you can just take some decent photographs for me. I said, sure. So of course, I'd do it for free. So, but I'm using this. It's like, okay, well, I'm getting this money. I'm going to use this to actually improve my ability to take better architectural shots, because I'm always into that challenge. And maybe it's a way for me to learn how to make some gadgets, whatever. We started in this. Now, we didn't foresee this at the time, but she's about to get like 8 listings. Now, for each listing, why am I hired here? I'm hired because she knows me, I'm available. She didn't go shopping, photographers, okay? And that's also the other thing. The number one thing of what makes you, why you can make a business in anything is being available. Being available is everything. That's 99% of it, okay? Being available. So I was at the right time, it was available for the price, whatever. And she knew that I would turn the photos over in a day. That's the other thing, getting it done yesterday. So photography and selling photographic services is all about being available and turning it around within a day. That's 99% of it. Again, if you think it's anything else, diluted. If you can do that, if you are available and you can turn it around, and you don't make any huge errors that any idiot can point out, like out of focus shot, you'll get paid. As I got paid $100 to go to each listing. All right, so this is where the fun happens. This is where photography, like anything else, is a business, and there's some good things, but there's a lot of bad things, like all businesses. And to pretend that it's just going to be like this creative thing, you're going to have fun, no, it's never going to work out that way, ever, ever, ever. So I'm not going to go in. I could have just taken my camera, like that guy Matt, and went around just taking the 20 shots or whatever, and collecting my $100 and went home. That's what she said she wanted, but I knew that wasn't what she really wanted. I mean, she did want it, but she didn't want it. And that's just it. In any business, right? The client wants exceptional work, but they're always torn between, whenever you do anything, you try and do it well. That little improvement you can make, even if you succeed, so you take those 20 photographs, on 3 of those photographs, if you get 3 great photographs, now the other photographs now look bad. So you either, in any business, you didn't need to make everything always needs to be consistent in the same quality. If it isn't, it causes stress and anxiety and pain, and people get upset, and it's bad, and it gets you upset. So as I'm taking these photographs and I'm learning these tricks, some of my photographs for each listing are getting better and better. But as better as those photographs come, the other ones are getting worse. So then she'd say, don't try and take really nice photographs. Just do what Matt did. Just went around taking the photographs. I said, if I do that, they're going to be grainy. You're going to be upset with that part. You can be like, they don't really quite look right, you know. And she wouldn't answer. You know? So, you know, whenever you do a job, you know, like this, your desire to do it artistically or even to just do it well is always going to be met with real world bad things happen, like photographs. So we go to this, we do this condo, and I go around and I take the shots. Now, by the way, I did 2 sets of shots. I would go around and take the matte-like shots. I put in a folder, said this is without flash, the regular shots, and then I create another shot with the strobes and the flash. And those are the shots I would spend like 5 minutes on each, 10 minutes, whatever, on each one. I really try and get them good. So I gave her 2 sets of photographs. The photographs she normally got for 100, essentially, and the photographs that I tried to do well. Now, where do you think she always took the photographs from? The ones that, you know, that I spent time on, right? So she, even though I explained it to her, again, it is a saying in consulting, you know, if you give the client a bullet, they're going to shoot you with it. And of course, that's true here. I gave her a bullet, she shot me with it. So there's one shot of the living room going into the kitchen, and the kitchen was lit with these incandescent lights or whatever. And I had, you know, strobes in the living room, dining room, so I could get the proper saturation. But I can't get the flash. I don't have the equipment or the time or the whatever to get the kitchen lit properly. So just take the shots. You basically have, you know, one color in the balance in the living room and another in the kitchen. Of course, if I knew about Photoshop, I could have fixed it. You know, there's always what ifs. But again, number one rule: you're available and you turn around things yesterday. There's never time to learn something you might need to do to make something right. It's just a fact of life. So, you know, whatever you think you're going to do with your photography, you're going to have to punt on things. You're going to have to submit stuff that isn't quite good. And it's going to upset you. And anyway, so, you know, this is a particular shot. So I was like, should I include it? And I really felt I had to include it because it's better than nothing, right? So I included it. And oh, by the way, during that same shoot, I took this sort of close up of the fireplace. And she comes in, she goes, I'm never going to want that shot. Why are you taking that shot? And I just said, I'm just taking it for me. Even though in the back of my head, I'm like, you don't know what you're talking about. You know, whatever. She used that shot, right? And I'd labeled the shot you said you didn't want. So she got, so anyway, so there is fun in this game. So, so the shot where the kitchen is in the yellow light. So she calls me, she's complaining about it. It doesn't look right. We printed it out, it looks like horrible. You know, what am I going to do? And I say, well, I don't know what your person is doing there. Can I come in and talk to the person who's doing your Photoshop, whatever? She starts whispering, this person, yeah. Like, no, you can't come in here and talk to this person that's already stressed out and has all these other things to do. You're just going to make them feel like an idiot, and then they're going to get upset, and then, you know, they're going to, you know. Again, and photography, and like every other business, there's a long chain of things that happen. You're one part of it, okay? There's a bunch of other stuff that can affect the quality that you have no control over. So when bad things happen out of your control, so something bad was happening, I don't know whether somebody resaved or resized this image because it wasn't that bad, but whatever happened, I had no control over it. And all I can do is just say, is defend myself to my client. And, you know, she's like, okay, don't worry about it. And she hangs up. And I knew that she didn't really worry about it. But I had a miserable night. Like for 3 days, I was super depressed. I felt I'd let her down, that, you know, I could have done the photo, coulda, shoulda, woulda. That's just the way it is. And it has nothing to do with photography. It has to do with she's trying to sell these listings. She's trying to get the best photographs possible to fill a brochure. She doesn't care about the photographer, the photographs. Even the people buying the houses don't care about the photographs. They just care that they have something to look at that sort of represents what they're going to buy, that shows the value, that the value is, let's say, $700,000 and not $200,000, right? That's what it is. Now, yeah, good photography is good and important. Everybody agrees it. They've done studies, but really, in the real world, right? Everybody's just trying. So anyway, she's doing her best, and I'm doing my best, but things are going wrong. Now, why even for the paltry $100 a shoot is she hiring me versus other people? I like to think it's because I take good photographs, and I think I am good, but I will tell you why. I know why, because she said why. I don't give her grief. Even about the photo, when she came and said, I didn't argue with her about the fireplace photo. I just said it's for me because I knew that's what she wanted to hear, and I labeled the photograph you didn't want as a joke, and when she put it in, I didn't say I told you so or anything like that. I just laughed. It was over. Over. My job is to make the properties look good within the time allotted for no money, and that's it. And I'm just filling out boxes in a brochure. Professional photography is just about filling up these empty spaces that need something to give context to further communicate something that the thing is saying. So on the website and the brochure, it's saying, oh, we have this property for sale, and I'm producing some images that support that give the person an idea of what it is. It hopefully motivates them to come down, and look at it. That's what I'm getting paid for. I'm not getting paid to do good photography. So how not to fail at becoming a professional photographer. 1, don't sell yourself as a professional photographer. In fact, before you go into each meeting, if you imagine that in the world that being a photographer is illegal, that if you sell yourself as a photographer, it's like trying to sell a Ponzi scheme to be thrown into jail. If you have that mental mindset when you go in there, I believe you'll be more successful. Because you'll look at the challenge like, well, I can't say I'm a photographer. I can't say I'm producing or selling photography. So all I can do is really sort of talk to the person, find out what they want, and sort of obliquely mention how I can solve this problem without mentioning photography. That's how you would succeed. So if you went into, let's just say, you want to do portraits or headshots, and you go into a law firm and you say, oh, I'm a photographer, these are these headshots that I do and these portraits, look how good these look. What's that person doing? If you did it that way, they're like, okay, well, is he a good photographer? Should I look at other good photographers? This photograph doesn't look that good. Or maybe it's the person. I don't know. And they just all get all confused and anxious and whatever. It doesn't really work that way. Because actually, it's not even a problem that they have. You're bringing them another problem. Like, how do you tell a good photograph? What's a good photograph of a lawyer? That's not what you're asking them. I think I have the best photograph of a lawyer. They're like, oh, do you? It's confusing. So think about it. You're not able to sell yourself as a photographer. So you go in there and you say, oh, what do you think would help you get more legal services? And they would say, well, people come to our site and they look at it and they don't stay very long. And you said, well, because generally, unless there are photographs on a site, right, we don't really stay. I mean, how many magazines or newspapers do you read without photographs or images, right? None. You need some photographs, right? All publications need them. So what if we put in some photographs of the partners? Maybe some people working around the desk. Maybe that'll make your site look better. People spend more time and will read about what kind of legal services you offer. And then that person would be like, yeah, okay, how can we do that? And you say, well, I could come in for a day with this piece of equipment. And, I know a bit about publishing, and I can make you these images, and I can send it to, do you have somebody that does I'll send it to that person that already did your brochure without the images. And they'd be like, okay, well, how much would it cost? And you say, well, it's $5,000 or whatever. And they say, is it worth $5,000 to get people to read our website? They'll go, they'll think about it. Hopefully they'll say yes, and they'll come back to you and they'll say they do it. Without ever saying you're a photographer, without even ever discussing photography. Because believe me, photography, nobody buys photography, period. Unless it's like nudes or something. I guess you might buy it. But, and even that is to meet some sort of specific goal. So I think if you want to succeed at professional photography, do not sell yourself as a professional photographer, or even a photographer in general. You're a problem solver. And the problem that you solve is people get bored unless they see images. They need images, and you provide images. And the way you provide images is with a camera. Well, you could do it with a pen paints or whatever, like an artist, but you do it with the camera. That's what you do. But if you focus on the client's problem, what they need, to improve themselves, then you can get somewhere. And I learned this early on when I was younger. 'Cause I make my living as a software developer. I used to bring my laptop everywhere, and I'd show the client all this stuff, and they say, "Oh, we were thinking about this," and I immediately, "Oh, yeah, look at this, look at that." And like about 15, 20 years later, I realized, oh my God, while I'm doing that, I'm missing like really what they want. I'm now telling the story about what I want to do, what I can do. I'm not hearing enough about what they can do. In any meeting, you can't. You can speak for like 3 days to really understand what they want to do. Time is really precious. You can never figure out in a meeting what people really want. That time is so valuable. So I stopped bringing my laptop, and it was the best thing I ever did. And I just listened. So when you go in as a professional photographer or a professional anything, you need to listen and find out what that person, what they need fixed, what they need improved, what they, why they're talking to you in the first place, why they have a problem in the first place. Because if they didn't have a problem, if they took the photographs themselves and put in the brochure and everything was okay, they wouldn't be talking to you, right? But they are talking to you, but you need to understand what it is that they need. Now you can have some ideas, but no idea is worth anything unless it's in the context of their problem or where they want to get to. So, and you need to spend all your time explaining that in a way that they understand. Because most people don't understand, right? I mean, photography is a complex subject. So finding a way to explain it, you never want to get into more detail than you can, because again, it just makes people anxious. To understand exactly what the person is and how to really focus what you, and stay relevant on what they want to fix or what they want to improve and the specific way that you can do it, you really need to listen. And again, you can't be a photographer. So again, that's my number one rule, not to fail in photography. Forget that you're a photographer. It's illegal. You cannot say you're a photographer to anyone. You should not even bring it up. Okay? What's the client's problem? Solve. I mean, this isn't new. This is right in any sales book, a marketing book, a business book, because it is. It's the way the world works. People aren't making this up. This isn't good business advice. This is just reality. And it's worked for me. The more I listen to what the client wants, the better I do at business. Another thing, never talk about photography to somebody or try and get their opinion on a photograph. I know you want it. I want it. I take thousands of photographs, and I would love to have, compliments. And I'd say I get maybe 1 out of 1,000 compliments, which is interesting. 1 out of 1,000 people make a compliment, which is interesting to me, because I would think just on a politeness alone, maybe 1 out of 10 people say, "Hey, nice photograph." Even if it's a bad photograph, they'd say, "Nice photograph." So why don't people ever compliment photographers about their photographs? Because really think about it, right? I mean, I think if you do photography, you'd probably know that this is true. That you take all these photographs, you take some really good ones, and sometimes people will say, "Oh, this looks really cool," but generally they don't. And the reason they don't, I believe, is that it is a very emotional thing, photography, and it's very subjective. And when you try and objectify it, when you try and move from the subjective of either you like or you don't like a photograph to the objective thing of it's a good photograph, we both agree it's a good photograph, that brings in a lot of anxiety. So if you're showing some of your photographs, right? So let's just say again, we'll go back to the lawyer thing, right? You take a bunch of headshots, and you're showing a bunch of photographs, right? And you take a photograph you think is really good of that person, and you say, "Oh, look at this! This is great," and the person says, "No, I look horrible in that." All right, can you win here? No, you can only lose. Because even if you agree and 1,000 other people agree, that person, they don't agree. They don't think it's good. And the more you try and talk them into saying, "Hey, it's a good photograph," the more anxious you make them. Because if it isn't a good photo, then what do they know, right? It's so personal. It's so like, our belief in what's good and what's bad, when it's questioned, it makes us nervous. Now, there are things that when we're questioned, we don't care about, like a music. So if I like a piece of music and somebody says, "Oh, well, that's not good, this is good," I don't care. I know what I like, okay? There's certain things, yes, that we know what we like, that's fine. Like we like a piece of art, we know when we like it, we can argue about it. But photography, when it's a photograph of somebody else, of them, or their product or whatever, it's not like that. You can't defend it like something else, some music or whatever, where you know what you like. You're actually not certain, because there's a lot of stuff going through your head. when you look at a photograph of yourself, and we all know people don't know good photographs of themselves. I don't, right? Now, very few people can step back and say, listen, if you think it's good, I trust you, and I'll find a way. But most people aren't like that. It just makes them anxious. So, but just in general, you can't argue a good photograph to anybody. So really, the job is not to provide somebody with good photography. It's to reduce their anxiety that a photograph is bad. And that's going to be hard, like if you think it's bad. It's like when I was telling you about the story about when I took the shot of the kitchen or whatever. The correct thing for me to say was, no, the photograph is fine. Yeah, it's yellow, but it's okay. People will live with it. But I actually agree that's got a problem. But I was actually saying that's the wrong thing. It's impossible not to do this. But you do have to recognize, and I do recognize, what the right thing is to say. Just like when the guy came over and said, "Oh, why don't you have the Nikon?" She says, "My Nikon broke or stolen yesterday. I'm sorry. I had to bring this Ricoh. It's a really good camera. It costs a lot of money. This 3 professional photographers, say something to make him happy instead of, my young bullshit attitude." So again, the point is here, photography is very emotional about the things that people care about, the things that are related to them, and you cannot talk them into stuff. And if you try and pretend like you know more than they do, you just make it worse. So, you're almost better off, like, so you go into the law firm, you take the photograph, and they say it's not really good. You just say, "Hey, listen, I'm sorry, maybe I can come back tomorrow or something and take another one." They're going to say, no, don't do that. We'll just live with that, And they'll put it on the site, and they'll live with it and forget about it. And maybe over time, people say, "Hey," and that does happen. People say, "Hey, that's a nice photograph." And then over time, they'll change their mind. Like, "Hey, that's a good photograph." And you know what? When they want to hire, when they need some photography again, who will they call? You, right? Because you let it happen naturally, and you didn't force it. You can't force the objective truth of good or bad photography to people. And if you try and do that, it may work on some people that just don't care or whatever, want you to deal with it. But I think it's not going to work. Again, I'm not saying you can't say, "Hey, this is a great photograph. I'm very proud of this." But that's different than saying, "Hey, you're wrong about what you think," right? Yeah, you can stick to your gun and say, "I'm very happy with it." But as soon as you try and change somebody's mind about photography, about what they need, about what's good, I think you're in trouble. So one question I've asked myself is, why did I end up making a living in software development and not photography or video, which are really my first loves? And I believe the reason is, and it's sort of ironic, is that I don't really care about programming. I never have. I mean, I find computers interesting. I find the work challenging and interesting, but I don't take any pride in calling myself a computer programmer. In fact, I don't. People say, "What do you do?" I don't even know how to explain it. I do stupid stuff. Really, I do. I think it's stupid stuff. I enjoy it when I'm doing it. I enjoy solving the problem, but I actually don't really think anything of it, which is ironic because many people love to say that they're, a programmer, that they get paid a lot of money to sit in an office and program computers. So that's always ironic. Photography is different. Photography makes me anxious. I love photography, but I also always wonder, is it good? Is it good? I'm always insecure about it. I can't just do it and just say, "Oh, yeah, it's done, it was fun while I did it, give me my money, goodbye," which you can do in programming, right? So it's a weird thing but I think, successful people that make money in photography also have that. It's a weird thing I know to say, and maybe you have to write the comments below, but I believe you do have to be sort of detached. You sort of have to love what you're doing without loving it too much or in the wrong way. You know what I mean? So I think people that make a living in photography, they love taking photographs, but they don't need somebody else's input about it. They're not insecure about it. But you get insecure about things that you really care about and you're uncertain about in a weird way. You know what I mean? So they love it, but they don't love it quite too much. And that's why I think you'll find that many good photographers don't care about the equipment, right? Because they just don't care that much about it. I mean, they do. Don't get me wrong. They love what they do. They love producing images. But they're not really hung up about how they're produced and the fine points and all this other kind of stuff. I mean, they'll get into it somewhat. You know what I mean? But they're not really into that stuff because they just like doing it. It's the same thing with me and computers. When I first started to like get good at and get paid real money at it in the companies, I'd always have like this crappy computer. And they'd say, "Oh, you can have this better computer, if you want." Now, in the beginning, of course, I did. But after a while, I didn't care. I didn't want to go through the time of moving my files over. I didn't care. It's 4 generations back. I just didn't care. And I don't care to this day what computer I have. I'm very good. I get paid to program it with. I should have the best thing. I should be into it. But I don't really care. It's just a tool. I do like a very narrow problem-solving thing. And I enjoy doing it. And I don't really worry about what's outside. So I think, if you're going to be... If you really love photography, then do it as an art. Do it for yourself. But if you're going to make a living at it, a real love or a real questioning of whether it's good or not, the philosophical, like, is it good enough? Trying to, like, find something in yourself, that's death to the professional aspect of it. Because I think professionally, just doing it 8 hours a day, you can't do it with that kind of anxiety about what's good and what's not good. You just can't do it. Like with programming, I don't understand how I get paid. I would think there'd be tens of other people better than me, but there aren't. I mean, whatever. I always end up doing it because nobody else can. I don't know why. I don't even care. I don't care that much about it. Again, I enjoy doing it. I'm good at it, right? But, I just gravitated here because I'm good at it. And people said, "Okay, you're good. I'm going to pay you money." And it's the same thing. I think if you can do photography, well, people pay you money because you like doing it. But you're not like, again, the whole question of what equipment you're using, are you good at it? You enjoy doing it. That's it. I think the key to any successful business is that, again, you're fitting in with somebody else in a way that suits you. So I like working by myself. It's another thing I like about programming. So there's something that fits your personality, and you can fit into, this project that's being done in a way that fits your personality, and you don't get insecure about it. You don't really care that much. Again, it's ironic. You don't care that much about the things that, theoretically you should care a lot about. You don't. You have to. There's certain things you have to let go in life or not care about in life to succeed at them. So it's a weird thing. Just like in sports, right? It's always amazing to me. I watch, some basketball player like, he'll go, 1 for 50 in a game. I'm like, quit. I'd quit right there. I'd never come play. Gonna be too embarrassed, when they lose a championship with one shot or whatever, but they don't because they like shooting the basketball. Next day, it's more important to them they can shoot the basketball in the hoop than question whether they're a good basketball player or not a good basketball player. Okay, probably belaboring this too long, but again, it's another thing I think is a trick to not failing at photography is to actually caring about the right things and not caring about the wrong things. So, what are the final conclusions of how you would become a professional photographer? One, again, availability. So that means anybody that could possibly hire you, you make sure they know who you are. And that means bringing your business card around or whatever. They're not going to find you on a website. You have to go make sure they know who you are. In their mind, you're a photographer. You can, again, not a photographer, that you could take these photographs. So that's number one. So the more people that know about it, the better. Or that a few people that would definitely hire you know about. Anyway, you have to be known, right? You can't sell dollars for a quarter if nobody knows about it. It's one of my favorite sayings ever, right? Nobody knows you can do photography, you'll never get hired doing it. So availability is number one. Number two is that you're somebody that people want to work with. That is so important. It is so, so important. So I just tell another story. It's in this movie about these actors that are not quite stars or whatever. And my sister dated one of them. I forget his name. Anyway, in this story, right, he's on the set, and I think it's just a PA or whatever, and maybe has like one little part. And when they're hanging out, he does this trick of catching a fly. I forget the whole story. Right? And when the director goes to do another film, they need somebody. He goes, "Oh, why? Go hire that guy that catches the fly." He didn't remember his name or anything. He just remembered that he was a fun guy that could catch flies. Had nothing to do with acting or whatever the guy was doing, right? And I find this is true. We all want to work with people we can get along with, that we can spend time with. That's so, so important. And, we like some people. There's no, like, perfect way of doing it. You're going to get along with some, not others. So, but at any rate, the more people that know that you do it is number one. Number two, that they know who you are, what kind of person you are to work with, so they can decide. Now, some people may want somebody who's very uptight. Somebody wants somebody who's very relaxed, whatever. again, that they know who you are. So I think that's being available, knowing what kind of people you'll fit in with, and that they know that you'll fit in with them. And I think, number three, always be tuned into what, the context of what you're doing. Don't get into your own thing. In a way, you can get into your own thing, that's fine, but never in a way that makes somebody else anxious. Reduce that, okay? If you want to get into like, oh, what lens should I use and what camera should I use, and go on forums and have endless conversations, that's fine. But don't go into a meeting and say, well, I'm undecided between the Nikon and the Canon. Well, the Nikon does this and the Canon does this. You're not going to last that business long, okay? Just people don't want to know all the nitty gritty. They just want to know, you just do what they want to do. If there's certain things that are important, you have to figure out what's worth talking to and what's not. And don't bring your problems to them, like which camera, okay? So, okay, availability. Trying to remember, am I leaving anything out? And again, remember, photography is just about filling an empty space with something that brings context to the whole thing. That's it. You're filling an empty space. If you think that you do the lowest form of work, you'll be better off than thinking you do some, photography. If you think you're just the guy that puts some colors in an empty spot, I think you'll succeed better than thinking anything else.